and a very warm welcome to Middle East Matters. I'm Sanam Shantier. Coming up on our programme this week, Iran and Israel's shadow war is once again spilling into open daylight. This time, a nuclear facility is hit in what Tehran has described as an act of terrorism. Will Syrian refugees have to pay for the EU's hostility with Turkey? Stay tuned for a report from Gaziantep, where 500,000 are stuck. Most see no sign of hope on the horizon. Plus, rewriting the narrative, we'll be speaking to Lebanese-British actor and singer Nadim Naaman about representation and typecasting on screen. Now, once again, tensions are ratcheting up between Iran and Israel, this time after a nuclear facility in Natanz was hit by sabotage. For now, Israel is not claiming direct responsibility in what analysts are calling a shadow conflict that's increasingly spilling into open daylight. Tehran says it will take revenge.
This is the nuclear facility at the center of the latest simmering tensions between Iran and Israel. The site, the Natanz enrichment plant, is located in the desert in the central province of Isfahan. On Sunday, it blacked out. Iranian authorities have described the incident as an act of nuclear terrorism, vowing retaliation.
The Zionist regime with this action tried to take revenge on the people of Iran for their patience and wisdom when it comes to the lifting of the sanctions. Iran's response will be revenge on the Zionist regime at the right time and right place. Since the incident, Israel's media has consistently reported a, quote, devastating cyber attack on Natanz orchestrated by the country. Officials, for their part, as a matter of policy, have not confirmed or denied the attack. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, however, did take to the podium to reaffirm his position on Iran.
My policy as Prime Minister of Israel is clear. I will never allow Iran to obtain the nuclear capability to carry out its genocidal goal of eliminating Israel. And Israel will continue to defend itself against Iran's aggression and terrorism.
If confirmed, it wouldn't be the first time Tel Aviv has tried to sabotage Tehran's nuclear program. In fact, according to current and former officials, among them Meir Dagan, an ex-general in the Israeli army, there's been a targeted killing campaign against Iranian nuclear scientists.
Israelis have been engaging in a shadow war against Iran for many, many years. In order to prevent Iran from advancing its nuclear program, they're saying this to the Americans. You don't have to give them sanctions relief. You can just attack their scientists. You can just attack their facilities.
The latest incident comes one day after Iran launched advanced centrifuges to enrich uranium, a key component for nuclear weapons, on what it calls National Nuclear Day. The event was marked by this music tribute. It also coincides with the resumption of negotiations between Tehran and the international community aimed at reviving the Iran nuclear deal, a deal by which Netanyahu has said Israel would not be bound.
Turning our attention to an agreement between the EU and Turkey that was adopted back in 2016 to reduce the number of migrants crossing into the bloc. 5 years on, the two sides are still butting heads, with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan saying the country needs to limit the flow. Now, here's a report from Gaziantep, home to some 500,000 Syrian refugees.
On the front lines of an ongoing crisis, Gaziantep is Turkey's fifth biggest city, located near the Syrian border. Here, more than 1 out of 5 residents is a Syrian refugee.
In 2014, I came to Turkey because of the war. It's been 7 years now, but it's all right. The conditions are good, thank God.
For Abu Muhammad, conditions may be good, but they're unstable. He can lose his job at any time. The owner of the bakery where he works was forced to close his last shop because he didn't have a license.
They come to check the size of my store and tell me that it's too small to give me a license. There are always problems. It's so difficult.
Officially, about 500,000 Syrians live in Gaziantep, yet no extra lines in the municipal budget have been created for their needs. Many work without a license or insurance, are therefore cheaper to employ than Turkish citizens, and are accused of lowering wages. City officials say they're aware of the practice, but claim to be powerless.
They're not Turkish citizens, so we can't set anything aside for them. There are Syrians living in Urfa, Kilis, and other cities that come here to work. And because employers prefer Syrians, Turkish people are left without a job. And with more residents, rents are rising. Those are the kinds of problems we're facing.
Problems that Syrians are made to pay for every day. Doa is a student and has gotten Turkish citizenship. She's no longer afraid to speak her mind.
I've been discriminated against a lot because I'm Syrian. When I went to rent a house, I showed my Turkish ID card. I was told that the document didn't work for me, that in any case I was and would remain a Syrian. The fact that I've become Turkish has somewhat diminished the racism and discrimination, but it hasn't disappeared entirely.
Like other Syrians, Doa has little choice in the matter. Her dreams of Europe have become a fantasy, and going back home is not an option either.
Now, until several years ago, Nadim Naaman, a Lebanese-British actor and singer, was focused on building his career in the West End. But since his ambitions have turned towards celebrating his Middle Eastern heritage, so now he brings together the best of the West End and his roots in a way that's not been done before. Let's watch a clip of Nadim's latest project, Rumi the Musical.
As the sun reveals its face like lightning and remain the same.
Nadim, thank you so much for being with us. Tell us about this, I suppose, transition in your career.
First of all, thank you so much for having me and giving me this opportunity. I suppose it was a very natural transition. As you mentioned, I'd spent the best part of a decade working on this acting career and one thing leading to another. But after a while, it became very apparent that I had never had an opportunity to combine my passion for my career with my passion for my Lebanese heritage. And in general, being aware of a lack of authentic representation of the Middle East on the Western stage. And so they say, write what you know. I was delving in the world of script writing and songwriting, and I was very fortunate to meet my co-writer, Dana Al-Fardan, and she was in London at the time, and we both had this conversation about wanting to write a musical that represented the Middle East in an authentic way. And it sort of opened the door to this world of trying to portray Middle Eastern icons and their legacy in a way that's universally accessible, to introduce these characters and these stories to Western audiences in a way that perhaps they haven't encountered before.
Write what you know, and of course your latest project, Rumi, was entirely recorded, and this is very interesting, in London and Doha, but throughout the pandemic, Nadim.
We couldn't put on a show, we couldn't put on a concert. Those avenues were closed to us, but the one thing we could do was get in the recording studio. And working across continents these days with technology is not as hard as it once was. And so we seized the moment, and we thought, if nothing else, let's come out of this lockdown with an album. Let's come out of this lockdown with something that we created, and hopefully generate a buzz for the project that will enable live performance in a more straightforward way on the other side of all of this.
So it wasn't just the format, but the casting, Nadim, for Rumi was also very particular, was it not?
It was, yeah. We made a decision early on that we were going to go for 100% authenticity in our casting. And to my knowledge, we're the first ever London-based musical that has a cast which is 100% Middle Eastern, North African and South Asian in heritage. Those regions being particularly relevant for Rumi, because Rumi, although Rumi is of course Persian, the legacy of Rumi 7 centuries on crosses all the continents, and he is adored and his work is adored world over. And we wanted to reflect that as best we could.
That's music to my ears, Nadim. How about a little teaser of one of the songs from Rumi for our viewers.
How many years seeking my true companion, from Damascus to Baghdad, my search goes on. Everywhere I've been, others ask to learn from me. My name precedes my presence, but I'm the one in need.
I feel like I've personally been serenaded. I'll take it personally. Nadim, lastly and very briefly, if we can, after that song, can we turn our attention to something that you've been very vocal about, this notion of TV shows, Hollywood, depicting us, Middle Easterners, as problematic people, as villains? Very briefly, if you can.
I mean, that's a great topic, and it sort of links to the reason that I started writing these shows in the first place. Yeah, I feel like it's a very outdated and very stereotypical issue that we only see the Middle East represented in stories about terrorism or difficult refugees coming to the West to cause problems and take people's jobs. And it's a very, very backward point of view. And ultimately, that's why we are writing Rumi. That's why we wrote Broken Wings. Let's portray these wonderfully rich and positive characters and shine a light on the region in a positive way, and not in a way that is to make us seem suspicious or dangerous or, as you say, villainous. It's just not called for anymore.
Let's do that. Let's rewrite the narrative. Nadim Naaman, it's been such a pleasure speaking to you here on Middle East Matters. Now, the Arabic term for menopause translates as the age of despair, and for decades, women across the region have tried to challenge the misconceptions about this natural stage of aging, which have been largely negative. In fact, according to one study, 81% of women in Saudi Arabia say that the phrase should be changed. So one campaign is trying to promote alternative words such as renewal, reflection, and wisdom. We'll leave you with a clip of that campaign. Thank you for watching.